I'm starting today off a little bit differently. It's the last day of February, and this morning I was really feeling really just kind of down about the political situation. And I know I've said a bunch of times that I've sort of become desensitized to the day to day of what's going on, stories that sort of would pretty clearly be major scandals at some prior point in American history, barely get any attention because it's sort of scandal after embarrassment after outrageous scandal day after day after day. And that's still true, right? I'm still feeling desensitized to the day to day. But this morning, I was really sort of feeling like the futility of it all. I was thinking about the political reality, right? Trump won. He's president. He's certainly not been able to do everything he wants, but he's doing major damage to many American institutions. He's really embarrassing the United States around the world. And somehow, like, I actually got to a place where I allowed to creep into my head the idea that maybe the Patriots who write in are correct, that maybe there's nothing more to really do, and the David Pakman show should kind of like wrap up or come to an end. And I started thinking back, the show started when I was in college, sort of on a whim, really. And it's grown and grown, and it's gone from something I did after class every other Wednesday by myself to a 5 day a week show with two full time producers. But are we really having an impact right now? And on a day to day basis, I laugh off the Patriot mails, I laugh off the criticisms that are unhinged and ridiculous, and we have fun with it. But in some way, I was wondering, like, are they right? Are they right in some way? Are we sort of trying to empty a pool with a teaspoon, sort of an analogy for an exercise in futility? And I've never believed that it's a waste of time. I've never listened to the haters in a real way. If I had, the show would have probably ended in that basement in Northampton, Massachusetts at WXOJ more than 10 years ago without ever having a single employee or dollar of revenue. And it's really easy to convince oneself that you're having an impact, right? Like, hey, we built something sustainable. Most independent shows like this one never even make that single dollar, never mind being able to have staff and a private studio. But what is the political impact here, right? Maybe we failed in some way. Maybe I should go back to electronic sales, although I couldn't because Circuit City is out of business, or teaching college or something, and producer Pat can become, I don't know, an airline pilot or something, and producer Noah Ferguson could go sell insurance. I don't know why I'm picking these things, but whatever, right? Insert some other activity. And I realized I was going down this negative path that really served no purpose. So I tried to reframe and think about it in a different way. And I went back to our audience email archives, which are not there only in case we ever need to submit some of those emails as evidence in a federal trial against someone who sends us 100 bizarre emails. I also keep them to be able to see the praise that we've received. And mixed in with all of the hater messages, there were some really positive messages about how I influenced this law school student 5 years ago to go in the direction of public defense or environmental law, or how that person 2 years ago had never really understood why politics even mattered. But because of the show, they became not only regular viewers, but also activists for the progressive idea. And how I reframed, at least in my head, was sort of to realize that it's really easy to look around and feel like we can't possibly be having an impact because, after all, as I mentioned, Trump is president. The U.S. is again becoming a laughing stock around the world. The Florida Senate is putting together a bill to arm teachers, and we're destroying our planet every single day with our disregard for what's going on with the climate. But then I realized I'm sort of ignoring my own critical thinking, which is that it's really hard to measure negatives. It's really hard to measure the absence of something. And I wondered, what would we be dealing with right now worldwide were it not for not just the David Pakman show, it's not a delusion of grandeur, but the whole of independent progressive media and investigative journalism and critical reporting that have exposed political and corporate wrongdoing and challenged the extremist ideas in interviews and in analyses, and at least made attempts to create, I guess I'd say, a more educated and engaged public through pieces like, for example, the Critical Thinking miniseries, which we're going to start releasing this week. And really, it would be the worst possible time to end the David Pakman show, even though this feeling of futility I know is shared by at least some of our audience. It would actually be the worst time. So I know that there are people in the audience that are feeling hopeless, and many are even saying, David, he's going to win re-election. I just don't know if I can stay involved in politics. I don't think I can do another 7 years of this. I sort of feel the same way on a day-to-day basis. But what I came to realize this morning, I was up early, as some of you can imagine. How much time did I have to do all this thinking? What I came to realize this morning is that we actually have to stay involved now. And for me, that means no, don't think about hanging it up. Instead, think about how to double down and double the size of the show, which is much more difficult, right? It would be way easier to say, hey, you know what? We lost. The Trumpists won. They have their guy. They're spreading their brand of sort of anti-intellectualism and non-diplomacy. And we lost, and let's go be insurance salespeople and airline pilots and college professors or electronic salesmen or whatever, right? But remember, Trump won because of 77,000 votes in 3 states. He lost the popular vote by 3 million votes. And he lost the world, which by and large was on our side for the past 8 years, and is by and large still not on Trump's side, as we've seen in poll after poll after poll. And the silver lining here is that we do have a resurgence in political activism as a result of this administration, the likes of which we arguably haven't seen for a long time. So I started in a very dark place this morning, but I'm here to tell you that I'm recommitting to the growth of the show, not just the sort of slow, steady growth we've seen since Donald Trump won in November of 2016, but I'm thinking way bigger, because it actually is the time to grow, not the time to walk away. And it's going to require not only doing the daily show that we do, but continuing to do the long form pieces, doing the extras like the Critical Thinking miniseries that starts to be released this week. But by the way, thanks to your support, and a lot of other things. And if you believe that it's time to renew the commitment, you probably think I'm going to say become a member now, but I'm not going to say that. Yes, sure, if you value what we do, become a member. But if you also think it's time, then help spread the message that there are alternatives to this sort of depraved, anti-intellectual, pseudo-jingoistic nonsense that has been perpetrated by those in the Oval Office. And whether it's emailing shows that you listen to or watch and say, hey, maybe interview David Pakman, or emailing me and say, hey, interview this other progressive host or activist who's doing something great, or posting clips to Facebook, or even just tweeting and emailing in and saying, hey, David, I'm glad you decided not to walk away, because what you're doing is valuable and it's a piece of what we all should be doing. And that is doubling down now and definitely not backing out. So my commitment here is that if there is the desire, and if there is the demand and the audience infrastructure, we're ready to go sort of full steam ahead. Now, if the desire isn't there, if I'm wrong here, and you're going to hear me say this and you'll be more influenced by the idea of walking away rather than doubling down, let me know. Say, you know what, David, I think your initial instinct this morning, very early this morning, was the right one, which is we've failed, we've lost, there's no coming back, and you might as well walk away because we're walking away. Let me know. I don't think that's the case. I think I'm going to hear from people who are going to say, no, you know what, David, in spite of the feeling of futility, in spite of the questions around what exactly was accomplished over the last 8 years, 9 years leading up to Trump's election, if this is where we are now, I think the overwhelming majority in our audience, not the haters, but really our core audience, is going to hear this and they're going to say, no. It's time to double down, and we're here to help you do that. Send me your thoughts. I'm on Twitter at @dpakman. The show is on Twitter at David Pakman Show, and we're here. We've got a fantastic program for you today. Lots of news, lots of activism, and lots of new things going on that I'm going to talk to you right after the break about.